Hello and welcome to Minnesota's Republican Roundtable. We are deep into the election cycle of 2024 and we get to vote for our congressional candidates this year. With us tonight from Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District is Tad Jude. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Tad, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm the oldest of 11 children. I'm married to my wife, Jackie, and we've got 3 children and 6 stepchildren, so it's a blended family. And by way of background, I grew up going with my father to a lot of small businesses throughout central Minnesota, delivering supplies. And during that time, I was actually, believe it or not, I was born and raised a Democrat. It seemed like at the time, working people were more likely to be Democrats, and you know, the people, let's say the Bloombergs or the Rockefellers, were more likely to be Republicans. And over the years, that's kind of flipped. You know,
It
where
has.
working people are more likely to be Republicans now.
It has, yeah.
I became a Republican in 1992.
Okay.
And that was based on principle. It was based on what the party stood for. I've always worked across the aisle. I've been in the legislature for 16 years. I was in the legislature for 16 years, 10 in the House, 6 in the state Senate, representing Northwest Hennepin County. That's kind of this area here.
Okay.
And then I was on the Hennepin County Board for 4 years. And then I was a district court judge for 11 years. So that's been my public service. And I've also, I'm a veteran. I was in the Army Security Agency for 6 years. And I've owned and operated 3 small businesses that are in operation today.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of my background.
You have an extensive background and experience, not only the Minnesota, House and Senate, but as a judge, and not including Hennepin County, but as a judge, it just seems like so much qualifications there.
Well, we handled all kinds of cases. You know, about half of them were criminal, about half were civil. And on the civil side, would have juvenile cases, would have probate cases, would have real estate cases, you name it.
You've seen it all.
And yeah, it was a general court, any type of trials, and we had jury trials, and we had some trials just to the judge. And it was an unbelievable experience. I've been very blessed in the opportunities I've had to serve the public. Absolutely.
And like I said, just seeing everything from a different point of view. We always see the court cases from, the TV side or, where the prosecutor defends it, but you saw it from where the judge gets on the upper bench there.
Yeah, and we don't have TVs in the courtroom in Minnesota very much. Yeah, you know, you have a few cases where they're in the courtroom, but it's pretty restricted. And the reason it's restricted is there's a real sense they want to be fair.
Yes.
And they feel if there's too much television in the courtroom, that it's not as fair. Now, the other side of that is that people want accountability. You know, they want to see what's going on in the court and in government in general.
Yes.
And that's something I've always felt strongly about, is just good government, trying to have transparency and accountability in government.
Now, before we get too far in, Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District, where does that cover in Minnesota? You brought us a nice...
I happen to have a map with.
You do?
And the 3rd District is currently represented by Dean Phillips.
Okay.
And Dean Phillips is vacating the seat.
Yes.
He challenged Joe Biden in the presidential primaries, and they did everything possible to keep his name off the ballot, and they said, well, we aren't going to bring out Joe Biden for debates. But a lot of what Dean Phillips was saying certainly had an element of truth to it.
Kind of right.
And but he's not running for re-election. It's an open seat, and it's a very mixed district.
Yes.
I think the 3rd District is known as a district with a lot of independent thinkers, a lot of highly educated voters. It runs all the way from Bloomington down here, right around the airport, over to Eden Prairie, takes in most of Edina, all of Minnetonka, all of Lake Minnetonka, all the way out to St. Bonifacius. Takes in Plymouth, Maple Grove, takes in western Hennepin County, Rogers, Dayton, Champlin, Brooklyn Park, Osseo. Then you have Anoka and Coon Rapids.
It's a little bit of
there
Anoka.
are about 33 cities
Okay.
all together in the 3rd district. And it's a wide-ranging district, a lot of working people.
I was going to say, it's a big district there.
It is. It is. There are 8 districts, of course, in Minnesota. And it wraps around the 5th district. The 5th
Okay.
district is the one represented by Elin Omar.
Okay.
That's Minneapolis. But it's all of the western suburbs, the southern suburbs, and the northern suburbs. So it's, if you look at it, it looks a little bit like the old Pac-Man.
I was thinking that.
Yeah.
I was
It's
thinking
kind
that.
of a crescent moon.
Yes. Now, as you're getting out, you're meeting with voters, what are you hearing from voters? What are some big issues that you want to tackle, not only in your campaign, but when you get to Congress?
You know, some of the things I'm hearing is what government has failed at. And they want to make sure that government works for people. We had this whole Feeding the Future
Yes.
scam. It was, you know, like $250 million that's meant to feed children. And it just disappeared, and obviously hungry children didn't get the food that was promised by that program. I hear about Southwest Light Rail. Southwest Light Rail hasn't been managed. I mean, it's about 10 years beyond scheduled completion date,
Yes.
and 2 or 3 times what was scheduled to cost. A lot of federal money has been wasted on Southwest Light Rail. They had a program to provide a bonus check to heroes. It was called a Hero Pay program in Minnesota.
Okay.
And they ended up paying people who were dead. You know, people, they say 40% of the payments couldn't be verified that went through that. And that was intended for people who worked in emergency rooms or worked in grocery stores during the pandemic, you know, when it was very dangerous to be out there working. And it's just a tragedy that government has failed so spectacularly in Minnesota, unfortunately. And I'm trying to make government transparent, efficient, and effective for the taxpayer. And the result of it is inflation. So what I hear from, you asked what I hear.
Yes.
You know, I hear about the problem of people having, trying to get a start in life, trying to buy a house, or trying to find housing. It's costing 2 or even 3 times what it cost 4 years ago to buy a home or to get housing. That's a big problem.
It is.
And you can go to the grocery store and you're, you know, paying $150 for what used to cost $100 at the grocery store. Or you go to the gas station, again, you're paying $40 for what used to cost $30 at the gas station. So we've got some big problems, not the least of which is illegal immigration. So that's one of the things I hear about. I mean, Hennepin County has put up a flag saying we're a sanctuary county.
Everyone come in, we'll help you out.
Yeah, and you know, the state of Texas or the state of Florida, they're more than happy to send people to Minnesota and Hennepin County. And then I hear about our county attorney not doing her job. You know, and that's, we had a case of Ryan Lundgren,
Yes.
who was a state trooper, who was doing his job as trained. And our county attorney didn't have his back. In fact, our county attorney brought murder charges, second-degree murder charges against a state trooper doing his job as trained. And, you know, it just was a travesty in our court system. So I hear about that. And then I hear about the problems we've got with the budget, you know, the federal budget. It's running a deficit of $2 trillion a year. They'll spend like $7 trillion. They have about $5 trillion coming in tax revenue. There are going to be some massive cuts in federal programs, or you're going to have inflation, which is a hidden tax. So, you know, I hear about our schools. You know, parents want their schools to be effective, and the federal government doesn't necessarily help.
It doesn't.
It doesn't necessarily help. I'd like to have parents involved, teachers involved in education to serve the students. They don't want to have bureaucracy. They don't want to have all these other programs. So like the programs in schools be reading, writing, arithmetic, STEM programs, but not all the bureaucracy that's out there. They're not happy with like men playing in women's sports. That's something I hear about.
And they shouldn't be seen. We've seen the dangers of that. Getting back to inflation, how would you tackle that in Congress? You talked about the grocery store. There's no such thing as a cheap run to the grocery store anymore. What would you do in Congress to help with inflation and help families, working families that are struggling?
The first thing we could do in Congress is to try to balance our budget.
Okay.
And bring some transparency to the budget process. Our congressional process has broken down because they seem to lurch from crisis to crisis. And then they'll have a great big garbage bill that's put together in the 11th hour, 11 p.m., 12 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. They'll put together a bill that nobody's had a good opportunity to read, and it just combines a lot of stuff in there that people haven't had a chance to really address with amendments or discussion, and then they have to get it passed. And that's not the right process. So we need to normalize the congressional budget process and then get a handle on the deficit so that we're not saddling everybody with $100,000 of debt, which essentially we're doing. And it actually costs more now to service our national debt than it does to pay for all of our national defense. So if you look at our national defense, we're spending less on that than we are on just servicing the interest on the national debt. And that's going to be a national defense problem, national security problem.
It is. And we're going to not only saddle that, but we're going to give it to our kids and our grandkids coming up here. And it's a problem that won't just go away.
No, it's a very serious problem that needs to be addressed by Congress. And that's where policy should be made. I mean, if you look at the three branches of the government, you've got the judicial branch over here, you have the legislative branch here, and you have the executive branch here. And they're all supposed to be a check on each other. And they all have a different job. But the job of Congress is to set policy, is to set the budget. The job of the executive is to work on international affairs and carry out the policy that Congress has set. And then the big questions go to the courts. and the courts have to look for justice. They shouldn't be political. They have to look for justice. And they should focus on the facts and the law and the Constitution.
And just the basics with that. Tad, getting into crime, you're taking a stance on crime, not only in your campaign, you've obviously seen this from the other side as a judge, as a legislature. What are you hearing about crime in the 3rd Congressional District, and what are steps you're going to take in Congress?
What I hear about crime in the 3rd District is people want to be safe and secure and when they go to the park or go to the grocery store. They are a little fearful of carjacking, it's really gone through the roof. Or, they're fearful of being held up or somebody ransacking their home. And we need to address those security concerns. People need to feel safe. They need to feel safe in school. Believe it or not, the legislature really went off the deep end. They said, we're not going to have school security officers. We're not going to welcome the police in our schools. That's the opposite of how we should be treating our public safety personnel. I mean, we need our first responders. We need our police, and they need to be a part of our community. Our community needs to feel safe. And we need to have police being welcome in our schools. The legislature has passed some really messed up bills. I mean, they pass a public safety bill which isn't aimed at public safety. It's almost the opposite of public safety. We have a county attorney that doesn't do her job, and that messes up the whole court system. Now, thankfully, we have a U.S. attorney in Andrew Luger who is picking up the slack and prosecuting some crimes that aren't being prosecuted by the county attorney but need to be prosecuted. And that's what the U.S. attorney should do.
And these should be at the local level. You know, not on the topic of the 3rd Congressional District race, but our county attorney for Hennepin, she even brought in D.C. lawyers for that Ryan case. And
you know, that's something I just couldn't understand at all, because first of all, it's very rare that you bring in outside lawyers. But if you do bring in outside lawyers, I'd bring in people who were in Minnesota, who knew Minnesota criminal law, rather than go out to Washington, D.C. Now, I have to say, their report backed up what everybody knew all along, that there wasn't a basis to bring the case. And, you know, I don't know why they had to spend $500 and some thousand of taxpayer money to figure out there wasn't a case here. You know, a county attorney needs to look at the facts, look at the law, follow the Constitution. And one thing that really stuck in people's craw is that every defendant has the right to see the evidence against them. I mean, that's a basic constitutional right. And if you watch a movie like My Cousin Vinny, you know, you see that every defendant has a right to see the facts that they're going to be using against them. The county attorney wasn't turning that over to the defendant, and it looks so political.
It did.
You know, and politics shouldn't be involved in our criminal justice system. We need to go with the facts, go with the law, go with the Constitution, and the courts have to be concerned about justice and nothing else, and just look at justice.
Now, education is a huge thing in Minnesota. We pride ourselves on, you know, great schools, but we also have failing schools across our districts, across our cities. What would you do in Congress for education, and especially in Minnesota?
You know, I'd try to get federal bureaucrats out of the way.
Okay.
And get them out of the classroom.
Do nothing, but not
possible.
do nothing. Yeah.
We need to have education focused on students. And the best way to do that is to have the parents involved and the teachers involved. You know, that we have such good teachers and such good parents that are concerned about their children. And that's what's best for the children, is look at the tools that the students need to survive and thrive in our economy. You know, have the ability to do arithmetic, reading, writing, and the STEM program. But all this other stuff, you know, being indoctrinated and this and that and the other thing, you name it, you know, that's something that won't give you the tools really that you need to survive and to thrive. And that's what we need to do, is just have our students focus on the basics more, you know, with the parents involved and the teachers involved, and get the bureaucrats out of there.
I like that. I like that idea, because, you know, otherwise bureaucrats just get in the way of it, and we're not seeing kids succeed here, especially in Minnesota, where we see that, you know, disparity between different schools, especially in some of our poorer areas.
And you know, we've had a good school choice program in some ways, you know, with charter schools. You know, a lot of charter schools have offered opportunities for parents to get involved. And, you know, I see that as something that a lot of children that need help they have found some help in finding a school that's tailored to their needs and allows the parents to be involved. And, you know, have just great teachers. And that's what we have in Minnesota. We've got some great teachers. We've got great parents that need to be involved in their children's education.
Immigration, you talked a little bit about that at the beginning. What would you do in Congress, and what are some of the issues our nation is facing when it comes to immigration?
You know, we've got huge problems with immigration. I mean, the border has to work.
Yes.
You know, I support legal immigration, and legal immigration is fantastic. I mean, it's been something that's contributed a lot to the strength of our country. But when we have 10 million people coming in here over the course of a few years, it can't assimilate that many new people, and they come from like 170 different countries. When I was on the bench, we had to have the ability to deal with 62 languages.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how you can expect to have a court system that deals very well with 62 languages. You know, you have a language line, you know, you have computers that help, but, you know, you really need to be fair to everybody, and it's very difficult to assimilate 10 million people just streaming over the border. And the problems that come with it have been fentanyl, and that's taken 100,000 lives a year in our country, and child trafficking. And in the courtroom, I would see children that would be up here from, let's say, Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador, you know, the triangle countries in Central America. Their parents were nowhere to be found. You know, you don't know if they were trafficked up here or if they were sent by their parents. You know, you don't know how they got up here, and you didn't know where they were going. You didn't know what home. I mean, somebody would say, well, I'm the uncle, or I'm the aunt. I don't know how we verify that. So it's hard to deal with, you know, 10 million people coming across in a period of 4 years, and deal with that in an orderly way where everybody's assimilated and given an opportunity. I mean, we're housing people. We're housing people. We're giving people health care, education, of course, and food. And often it's better than our veterans get. I'm the commander of a local American Legion post.
Okay.
And you know, we're trying to take care of veterans too.
Yes,
and,
as we should.
You know, a lot of veterans are homeless.
Yes.
And it seems like, you know, some of the illegals are coming in here and are entitled to benefits that aren't available to people who've been in the service, who've been out over in Iraq or over in Afghanistan, you know, fighting for our country. And we need to have a level of care for our veterans and for people who have been here as citizens, as well as people who come in as non-citizens. And so I'm real concerned about what's going on at the border, and try to get an orderly process back. I think we did have it 5 years ago. You know, 6 years ago, we had an orderly process. You know, we're building a wall, you know, a wall that seemed to provide some mechanism, you know, entry points.
Yes, we need to keep secure.
You didn't have, you know, China sending all kinds of people, you know, to cross the border, or people coming from countries that have been associated with terrorism. You know, they're coming in. And even on our northern border, you know, I mean, Minnesota has a northern border that's very porous.
Yep.
And it needs to be monitored, you know, not with a wall, but, you know, you can have drones, you can have electronic surveillance. I mean, there are many mechanisms that are available to do that. But we've had families freeze that have been trafficked through the northern border. And you know, they're, you know, sold a bill of goods. And then you have these coyotes, you know, these people that are
running them,
smuggling.
Yeah.
And they seem to be the winners.
Yeah, and they're not getting in
you
trouble.
know, they seem to be the people
I know.
that our open border has been servicing. And you have fentanyl coming in. And of course, they're paying this high price for the fentanyl addiction we have.
Very high price for it. Tad, unfortunately, we're at the almost end of our time here. I know this is a topic you could probably really have some thoughts on, and given your experience, have a lot of good, deep thoughts and ideas. Anything you want to say, last remarks or last thoughts for our show?
You know, I've really been very thankful for the reception I've had on the campaign trail. Over the years, I've door knocked personally 100,000 doors. And when you do that, you learn what's on people's minds, and they learn a little bit of what's on your mind, and yeah, you listen to people. And I really appreciated that. I appreciated the open doors that I've met.
Good.
And the people who've shared their thoughts with me. And I'd encourage people, participate, get out there and be a part of our system. And thank you so much for the reception everybody's given me.
Absolutely. How can viewers get a hold of you or reach you?
You know, I do happen to have a website. It's called tadjude.com, TADJUDE.com. And people can go there, they can find out about my background, they can find out about issues, and they can participate. And I'd sure welcome that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Jen, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Republican Roundtable. Remember to vote in the November general election, and thank you once again.